Okay, so we're going to get started. So everyone should have a handout. So we've gone through, we'll call it a survey of Sefer Iyov, and I think, Chaim, I think the one thing we can say is we're more perplexed now having gone through the book than we were when we started. I tried to identify a couple big picture questions. We weren't able to get into some of the minutia and the nitty gritty, and there are a whole bunch of books over there, and anyone is welcome to peruse them, from Rousseau to modern academics who will talk to you about the structure of the poetry, the various attempts to answer some of these questions. But I think the four questions that we would really like to have some sort of answer to is, number one, what is the point of this book?
Make you feel stupid.
What's that?
Make you feel stupid. No, yeah, it has something to do with. We can't figure out why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people.
Okay.
It's just a lot of Hashem.
Okay, that's it. That I'm glad you covered. You merged question one and question four, which I think a lot of people tend to do. Why do bad things happen to good people? Maybe that's what the book is about. If we believe that, do we have an answer? Don't have an answer. Okay. Hashem knows what's going on, and we don't. Okay, so maybe we kind of have an answer. I'm not sure how satisfying that answer is to go through 42 chapters and come out with what we probably knew before we went into the book. Question number two, who won the bet? Did Satan win the bet? Did God win the bet? Did no one win the bet? Did Iyov win the bet? I don't know if we have a good answer for that yet either. And then question number three, which I guess is really tied to one and four, is what is the meaning of God's response to Iyov? Right? God's response to Iyov let's quick recap. Iyov is a super righteous guy. Terrible things happen to him. Three friends show up and basically castigate him and say, if bad things are happening to you, it's because you did something to deserve it, because there's reward and punishment. Iyov spends the entire book getting progressively angrier at his three friends' response, insisting that he's completely innocent. We had a little interlude with Elihu, and then God shows up and basically does not address Iyov's questions at all. Instead, he gives kind of a big thunder and light show and says, I made the world and I do all kinds of super awesome things, and you have no idea how any of this works. So what do you have to say to that? And Iyov's response is, what I have to say to that is, I'm not saying anything because you are God and I am not God. And so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But why did God respond to Iyov in that way? I mean, we could say, I think some of the classical Mefarshim and the modern day commentaries kind of go this route. God was basically saying, look, there's a big picture out there that's much bigger than why do bad things happen to Iyov, and I know what I'm doing. I run the whole thing. You have no idea what I'm doing, so you'll just have to trust me, right? And Iyov says, okay, I guess I kind of just have to trust you. Now, it's kind of a big 180 or a big volt face for Iyov, who spent the whole book saying, I want to know why this happened to me, to then come to him and say, well, you can't know why this happened to you. This stuff happens, and it's bigger than you can understand. Well, okay, Iyov kind of assumed that, right? There were multiple times where Iyov said, I get that God is bigger and stronger than me and does everything and is in control. I get all that. I want to know why this happened to me. So for God to show up and say, well, this happened to you, we're not talking about that, and Iyov to say, okay, I'm cool with that, there's kind of a disconnect there, right? I think that's a fair. No, I'm getting some head shakes in the wrong direction from this particular corner.
Look, that's right. They've been around. I'm kidding. Iyov never curses HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's always talking about
with his lips.
What?
With his lips.
Correct.
Maybe his mind.
He's in pain. He's going on and on about his suffering and why is HaKadosh doing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much Iyov talks about his understanding of God's infinite wisdom and infinite everything.
Okay.
when HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows up, it's like, I understand that you think that you understand that you have no clue. No.
Mm-hmm.
That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response. It's not going to answer why did I hurt you this way. It's you think you understand, or you have an idea, or you think that you don't have an idea of.
Let me show you how much
right,
no idea you have.
Right. Then I can't even show you how much of no idea that what you have because you're a human being.
Right. Right. And
what's
there
your
are.
response?
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then he's called Avdi.
Avdi Iyov, right, all the way through. Yeah. And there are Meforshim that take that approach. That basically Iyov, what Iyov really wanted was a revelation, and he just wants to know that there's someone listening, and that there's someone who is running the show, because it looks like to him there's no one running the show. And the second he gets that, he's like, okay, that's really what I wanted. The one thing that prevents me from adopting that approach completely is we know why this happened to him. This isn't some big mysterious moral mystery. We read the first two chapters of the book that Iyov didn't read, and that God doesn't tell Iyov. God could just show up and say, well, there was this bet. Let me tell you exactly why this happened to you. It's not because of anything you did. It's not because I have some bigger picture thing going on and you're just kind of a cog in the wheel. It's because Satan showed up and he kind of double dared me, and so I said, okay. Right? Isn't that why this, at the end of the day, that's why this happened to him, right?
No.
No?
Meaning, on the surface, as much as fine, like, we're being given, like, the special features, the backstage pass to see that there was this Vayhi Hayom, and this conversation took place. Even then, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu entertain a conversation with the Satan? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring up Iyov? Where does the Satan get the idea? Like, all of it. Meaning,
Right. So that argument is essentially, this would have happened whether or not Satan showed up and bet God to do this to Iyov. God would have done this to Iyov anyway, because it was part of the plan in the first place.
right, so now, who's to say that part of the plan was not making the Vahi Hayom and this whole thing with the Satan?
Right.
It's part of it.
Right. That's yeah. I hear you. It's a little over my pay grade. I don't know. But it just the question of it still kind of irks
I
me.
mean, if you want to look at it on like what would you call it?
Big picture.
No,
Bigger
at
picture.
like eye level.
But Gove Nayim.
Right.
Yeah.
Like then okay, then yeah, sure. Like what the heck?
Right. Okay. At least from a story, qua story. Putting the philosophy aside, there's something about the story that doesn't end right. Right? Like when Avram was tested, then the Malach shows up at the end and says, "Oh, test. It was just a test.
Now I know.
And you passed, and here's the background information. I didn't want you to actually kill him. It was just trying to. It would have been nice, and we'll kind of skip to the last source on your page. If you flip both pages over to the last page, source number 7 is a quote from a Robert Frost poem called "The Mask of Reason," where he says he's kind of playing the role of God who shows up and kind of does the 43rd chapter of Iyov, and he's sort of apologizing to Iyov, and he says, "Too long I've owed you this apology for the apparently unmeaning sorrow you were afflicted with in those old days. But it was the essence of the trial. You shouldn't understand it at the time. It had to seem unmeaning to have meaning." Right? If I told you, Iyov, I'm going to put you through hell so that you can come out better on the other side, then there's no trial. Right? It has to seem like God has no reason for doing what he's doing in order for it to be a successful trial. Okay, so I want to try to answer question number 4, or at least show us why maybe we can't answer question number 4. Yes, there is pina colada and lots of other stuff. Please partake. And the shiur will not end until we finish every last pretzel and peanut. So, yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, so I'm going to start with source number 2. Actually, maybe someone else wants to read source number 2. I'll give you some background information before you start. Moshe, so God appears to Moshe, and Moshe says, "Harini nas kvodecha," let me understand your ways. And there's a question. So the Chazal are trying to understand what did Moshe want to know. One opinion is he wanted to understand why bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And the question is whether or not God actually answered that question for Moshe. That's what the Gemara is dealing with over here. So who would like to read source number dos?
Please, Rameh. So this we Rameh, then Rameh, he said, Shtaim Nasnu Love, Achas Nasnu Love. That two of much is granted him and one was not granted. Shnebaka says, Tachanesi es Asha Achon, and I'll be gracious with whom I will be gracious. I'll be gracious with whom I will be gracious. I'll be Shane Agoin, and even though he's not, Agoin's
Worthy.
worthy. Sorry, worthy.
What are you looking for?
Right? B'yichamti es Asher Arachem, and I will have mercy upon whom I will have mercy. Afapi Sheino Hago, even though he's not worthy.
Right. So what's Reb Meir's answer? There's no reason. There is no reason for God doing the things that he does. God does whatever he wants. And he's not beholden to any sort of official, he's got to, good things have to happen to good people and bad things. No. God does whatever he wants for whatever his mysterious reasons are that he is not letting anyone understand. That includes Moshe Rabbeinu. So you can't know why good things happen to bad people because God is super mysterious. And I think that is reinforced in source number 3 in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos, which we just need the first line, the first sentence for that one.
Stand in our hands to explain the security of the wicked, or the afflictions of the righteous.
Okay, so that's what the Mishnah says. We don't know. So all these attempts to explain Sefer Iyov as here's why bad things happen to good people are all kind of a waste of time because at the end of the day we don't really know. We can talk about tests and we can talk about what they talk about in source number 4, which is a also very interesting concept called Yisurim Shel Ahava. So let's read source number 4.
Before we go, what's Masya Mechari saying?
Oh, that has nothing to do with it. That's just a separate.
What does that mean? You tell him to lines and not a hand to factors.
That it's better to yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, it usually means that you should be follow the greater people rather than be the stupid people.
Right, the lesser people or the sly people. Yeah.
Gotcha. 4?
Sure. You're on a roll. Yifash fish.
If a person sees that what the suffering has come over him, he should examine his action, and as it stated, research and examine our ways and return to Hashem. Fashresh for like Musa, if he examined and he didn't find anything, Yasav a bittul Torah, Yasam?
Yeah.
Yasav a bittul Torah. Then he should attribute to the Torah. Shnema said Asher Hagavas
Ashrei Hagever.
Asher Teshena Yashem Umeshvach
Umitorasecha Flamdenu.
Happy is man who you punish Hashem and teach out of your law. Vim Hala, and if he did attribute to Bittul Torah, but he still didn't find anything.
Right. This is someone who has no Bittul Torah on his record.
Right. You should know that this is Yisurin of Ava, afflictions of love.
Okay. What does that mean?
As I said,
right. He has a pasuk to prove that Hashem gives Yisurim to people that he loves. What does that mean?
Sometimes there's no real easy answer. There's no real direct correlation.
Right.
Sometimes you're challenged out of love.
Out of love of challenging you. Is this more of a test that like Hashem loves you and therefore he gives you Yisurim so that if you continue to do good even in spite of that, then
increase your world.
Right. You move up to level 10. Increase your schar in Olam Haba, right? That was definitely something we did not see in Sefer Iyov at all, was any mention of, even the friends saying, oh, well, the reason that all this is happening to you is not because you did anything wrong, but it's just so that you get an even greater Olam Haba. And that whole strategy, I think, needs a little bit of a beer. Like we wouldn't say you have this all the time with like the Innocence Project. So a guy gets wrongly incriminated for 20 years, and then they exonerate him, and then he gets $1 million. You don't say, well, I guess that makes up for it. It doesn't make up for it, right? He would have rather not had, and this is something the Gemara talks about, where a person says, lo heim v'lo scharan. I'd rather not have the Yisurim and not have whatever schar comes along with them. So it's a bit of a challenging concept that Hashem afflicts people out of love. What that means or why that would occur is, I think, needs more understanding.
So, if I recall correctly, this Gemara continues and talks about people who went and said, I don't accept this suffering, I don't want it," and they had like it annulled or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like it's only like it's sarv ava if you accept it, and if you don't accept it, it doesn't seem like anybody really accepted it. But it kind of goes
Right,
on.
but it happened. But it like
right.
You have to.
But then they had it like removed or something like that. They would go and they say,
Right, it doesn't
please
continue.
Please daven for it not to continue. Oh, okay. If you don't like it, if you don't
Right.
like it.
Right, but that doesn't seem to be the situation with Iyov.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But it's just an interesting perspective of this Gemara.
The one that it does, well, that we'll get to the one person who does seem to accept it, and that will be in source 6. But first, I want to just mention quickly source number 5, where they're having this discussion of whether a person receives Yisurin for no reason whatsoever. So this is from a Gemara in Shabbos, Nun Hey Amud Aleph to Amud Beis, and what we want is really like the last sentence of the first paragraph, where he says right after Vagomer, 2 lines before the end of the paragraph, he says, "Ein Yisurin below Avon." People never receive any sort of afflictions without having done a sin. As it says, it's because of their pishaim and their avonot. That's why they're getting these nagoyim. That's why they're getting these afflictions. But then the Gemara continues on Nun Hey Amud Beis, and it basically proves that there are people who died for no reason other than the fact that the Nachash, the sin of the Nachash, the sin that the Nachash caused Chava to sin. So there it lists, like David's father, like they give a whole list, and one of them is Abigail Bas Nachash. Right, that's the name. That's her name in the pasuk. So, if you go 3 lines up from the end of the paragraph, why is she called Bas Nachash? Ela Bas mi shemes beitov shel Nachash. She's the daughter of the person who died only out of the sin of the Nachash. Money. So who's this person? Ilema Tana de Malach Ashares Vaha Ika Moshe Va'aron. Elav Rishim ben Elazar is the Tana. V'shma minan, and you see the Gemara concludes that yesh misa below chet, there are people who die without having any chet. Yesh yisurim below avon, and there are times where a person will receive afflictions, receive yisurim without any sin. V'tiyufta de Rav Ami tiyufta, and that's a final refutation of Rav Ami. Now the person who does receive yisurim and seems to embrace them is any takers in the Gemara. Someone has experiences really bad things and seems to completely embrace it and be okay with it. Nachum Ish Gamzu's, yeah. This is also the person I'm thinking of. Maybe is even one stage greater than Nachum Ish Gamzu, but is his student, Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah,
right?
3 things.
Right. So Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara you have here is not about Rabbi Akiva's demise, but it's actually Rabbi Akiva consoling someone else who's experiencing pain. And he says as follows, who wants to do, let's get a new reader, who wants to do source number 6?
There you see.
Shechala Rabbi Eliezer, when Rabbi Eliezer got sick, Nichnasu Arbaza Canaan, Vivakro. So 4 elders came to visit him. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Elazar, Ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva.
Okay, so we can skip what everyone else says. And let's go, if you flip over to page 2, you on the second line, like towards the middle, you get Nana Rebbe Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva Lamar. Chavivin Yisurin.
Chavivin
Okay.
Yisurim, right? That's pretty stark. Yisurim are chaviv, they're beloved. So what does his teacher say?
Amalahem. Is it Samchoni?
Yeah, like get me, like raise me up, so bring me a little closer.
Veshma Divrei Akiva. Talmidai. Shamar Chavivin Yisurin.
I want to hear that. Like that'll wake, right? The Rebbe is suffering. He's on death's door, and Rebbe Akiva's like Chaviv and Yisurim. That I want to understand a little bit better. The other guys. So Rebbe Akiva, essentially, I don't want to go through the whole Gemara over here, but essentially his proof is the reason that Yisurim are so good is because Menashe was a bad dude, right? We discussed Menashe in Villains in Tanakh, and there was nothing that turned him around except when he experienced Yisurim. So when he was taken away in fetters and he had kind of his atheist in a foxhole moment, that brought him back and caused him to do teshuvah. So you see from there, let's see where he has it. Yeah. Right, the last two sentences basically V'yater lo, and he davened V'yishma tchinaso, and his prayer was heard. V'yashivu Yushalayim, he was returned to Yushalayim l'malchuso. Right, so V'yadua ki V'yidu Menashe ki Hashem hu Elokim halamadata shechavivim Yisurim. So you see from there that Yisurim are beloved. Okay, so I don't know if we have much of an answer yet to the point of the book. I think we can say that why bad things happen to good people is maybe not 100% clear. It seems like there are multiple opinions in the Gemara. There are at least one or two opinions that seem to say there's no way of knowing. Right? We saw the Mishnah, we saw the Gemara. It's unknowable. And then what I would say that means is that if we go back to number 3, what's the meaning of God's response to Iyov? Also, kind of, it's unknowable. If the point of the book, right, if 1, 3, and 4 are all really connected, if the point of the book is to tell you why bad things happen to good people, and that's unknowable, then God's response is basically, it's unknowable. And then we're kind of struggling with number 1, right? Then what is the point of the book if the whole thing is unknowable? And I guess we don't really have a resolution for number 2 either. We haven't really decided if who won the bet and why. So some of the more famous responses to a few of these questions, Rav Soloveitchik gives, I think, a number of different answers over time. It seems like the last answer that he gave, as he himself was experiencing Yisurim and travails, was essentially, we don't ask these questions, right? The question is not, why do bad things happen to good people? It's, what is my obligation once that happens? What do I do about it, right? Yes, bad things happen. Great, we understand that. Now what should I do about it, right? That's the halachic man type of approach. I think the approach that I've found to be most rewarding is Elie Wiesel. So Elie Wiesel is kind of the modern day Iyov, right? He went through the Holocaust and he complained about God, right? And maybe just to back up a little bit, this is, I think, also an important point. We talked about whether or not Sefer Iyov is historical. Not whether or not Iyov is historical. I think we have a pretty good sense that Iyov has some sort of historical kernel to it. The person, we talked about him being cited in Yechezkel along with Daniel and Noach. But what was Sefer Iyov itself a historical occurrence? That is not necessarily clear. And Chazal talked about when did it take place. In this generation, Yaakov, Achashverosh, we had all different kinds of opinions, right? We saw those Gemaras. And then we saw the Gemara that says that Iyov is just lamashal, that it's there as a parable. Any takers on any other book in Tanakh that is fiction? 100% fiction, start to finish, that everyone agrees did not take place at all. Bonus peanuts and pretzels and pina colada.
Nevi'im or Ksuvim?
Okay, Ksuvim. We narrowed it down. Hint number 2, you read it every year. Some people read it every week. Shiurim! Excellent!
These are all mine now.
Shiur Shiurim is also right. It's fiction, start to finish.
Right.
It's interesting that there is a book of fiction like Shiur Shiurim is a lot easier to swallow. It's poetry, right? And it's a love story.
Right.
It's not meant to be.
It was like fiction. It's not. It's poetry. It's not.
But it didn't have the Shiur Shiurim describes
Like they should
the
fly initially.
right. The Shiur Shiurim describes a lover and a beloved, and they're back and forth, and she gets beat up, and all the different right. None of that is supposed to be, and no one assumes that it's factual.
Right.
It's describing it's poetry. So that's not necessarily surprising that it's in Tanakh. But for a story of fiction, start to finish, as a narrative to be in Tanakh is highly unusual and surprising.
Right. It's hard to call it fiction, though. I understand what you're saying. It's like it's not. There's no person who's named. I mean, there's Hashem, but it's not. It's not a.
No, by the way, in Shiur Shiurim, never mentions the name of God.
You're right. And the real, because when you see the translation, they change it.
Right.
It's right. The real text doesn't have it. You're right. No, that's true.
Yeah. So that's interesting that it was included in the canon, and no one seems to have any problem with it. As a mashal.
Either.
Right. No. That's what I'm talking about. That Iyov was included in the canon
Right.
without any questions, compared to like Koheles or some of the other things. Okay. So let's go back to Eli Wiesel. So what Eli Wiesel says is essentially Iyov's answer to God is the answer of someone who knows that they can't win a fight. That if you got into the ring with, I'm going to date myself now, Mike Tyson, the best thing you can do is throw in the towel as soon as possible. Because you know that you can't possibly win the fight. So by throwing in the towel without even trying to fight, what you're saying is, you've overpowered me. I'm not wrong. I don't admit necessarily that I'm wrong. I'm just not going to fight with you. I'm not going to fight with you because you're bigger and stronger, and you pulled out all the song and dance and light show. It's almost like a silent protest, right? It's almost a silent protest. I'll live to fight another day. I'm not going to take up the cudgels with God because I see that he's trying to blow me away. So great, whatever you say, you're right, God. Sure, I'll just stop talking now because you clearly want to be right, so you can be right. That's Eli Wiesel's take on it, because he's bothered by the fact that Iyov put up a good show, and then he suddenly
God shows up. He
He doesn't like go after him a little bit, and he just whatever.
Like a cheap Walmart
chair. Now, one other insight that Eli Wiesel had, and then I want to start with the audiovisual portion of our show, is that if this is a mashal, then we don't necessarily have to take everything that happened in the story at face value. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with what that means in a minute. Is everybody here familiar with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Not the book, not the later adaptations, only the 1971 movie. Willy Wonka. Gene Wilder. Yes. Everyone here familiar?
Yes.
Super quick.
The Johnny Depp.
No.
Not Johnny Depp. Not the abomination that is Johnny Depp.
No creepy teeth. No.
Okay. Super quick recap. Okay. We have Wonka, who is an eccentric recluse, owns a chocolate factory. He makes a contest. He puts a bunch of golden tickets in some of his chocolate bars, and whoever finds the tickets gets a tour of the chocolate factory. A bunch of kids find these tickets, along with a down on his luck poor little boy named Charlie. And each kid is allowed to bring somebody with him. Charlie brings his grandpa Joe. They go into this chocolate factory. It's super wow amazing, everything that a kid could possibly want. Each of the other kids does something wrong, and kind of gets sent on their way. Meanwhile, little backstory that I kind of left out. There's a guy named Slugworth, and Mr. Slugworth approaches Charlie and says, "Look, I want you to steal an everlasting gobstopper for me, and if you do, I'll give you riches beyond your wildest imagination." So Charlie actually does that. He steals a gobstopper, and at the end, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you what happens, and then I'm going to show it to you. Charlie. At the end, Charlie survives. He's the only kid that doesn't get sent away. And Grandpa Joe comes in to talk to Wonka and says, "What about the lifetime supply of chocolate? That was supposed to be the reward, at the end of the tour." And Wonka basically throws a fit, and he says, "You broke the rules. You drank the fizzy lifting drinks, and now I have to sanitize the ceiling fan. You get nothing." And Grandpa Joe's obviously, rightly so, enraged. He calls him a cheat. He storms out and he tells Charlie, "Let's give Slugworth that gobstopper." Charlie chooses not to do that, leaves the gobstopper for Wonka, and Wonka's like, "That's it. That was the last test. You passed the test, and now I can give you the whole factory. Everyone lives happily ever after." It's a great movie. You should go watch it with your kids.
Not really. He got shot out of the roof in an
Well-
elevator. We have no idea where it goes.
Okay. Now I'm going to show
Your
you.
Gotta
imagination.
watch the Secret.
Now I'm going to show you that scene. It's 3 minutes, but it's worth every minute.
Okay.
I'm going to show you the scene,
It's classic.
and then we're going to discuss it. So pay attention.
You feel like a teacher, like,
That's the point.
people are flapping on it.
Close.
Right, the happenings, right.
Have that
Right.
Mr. Walker, I am extraordinarily busy, sir. I just wanted to ask about the chocolate. The lifetime supply of chocolate for Charlie. Well, when does he get it? He doesn't. Why not? Because he broke the rules. What rules? We didn't see any rules, did we, Charlie?
Wrong, sir. Wrong. Under Section 37B of the contract signed by him, it states quite clearly that all offers shall become null and void if, and you can read it for yourself in this photostatic copy, I, the undersigned, shall forfeit all rights, privileges, and licenses herein and herein contained, etc., etc. Fax mentis incendium gloria culpum, etc., etc. Memo bis punitor delicatum. It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You stole fizzy lifting drinks. You bumped into the ceiling, which now has to be washed and sterilized, so you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
You're a crook. You're a cheat and a swindler. That's what you are. How can you do a thing like this? Build up a little boy's hopes and then smash all his dreams to pieces. You're an inhuman monster.
I said good day.
Come on, Charlie. Let's get out of here. I'll get even with him if it's the last thing I ever do. Slugworth wants a gobstopper. He'll get one.
Mr. Wonka?
So shines a good deed in a weary world. Charlie. My boy.
You won. You did it. You did it. I knew you would. I just knew you would. Oh, Charlie. Forgive me for putting you through this. Please forgive me. Come in, Mr. Wilkinson. Charlie, meet Mr. Wilkinson.
Pleasure.
Slugworth.
No, that's not Slugworth. He works for me.
For you?
I had to test you, Charlie, and you passed the test. You won.
Okay. So,
Cinematographer's time is really pacing.
so what I'm going to do is pass out to you guys an essay I wrote on Iyov, and I just want you to look at the first page. Take one and pass. There's a couple pages here.
The river of chocolate
Okay.
passage.
So, here we have a breakdown in the table of the characters of Iyov, the characters in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and who or what they represent. So, we've got Iyov, who is a hero due to circumstances beyond his control, lacks everything. That's our Charlie Bucket. Then we have God, the mysterious and powerful character who seeks to test the hero. That's Wonka. You've got Satan, agent of the most powerful.
Satan seeks to test the hero.
Satan, agent of the most powerful character whose job it is to perform the testing. That's Slugworth, Mr. Wilkins. Iyov's friends, examples for the hero of the wrong approach.
Sorry, I got really excited.
Iyov's friends, examples for the hero of the wrong approach. All the other kids who won the tickets. Then we've got God's answers to Iyov, the final test, Wonka's final tirade. And if you see later on in your handout, I actually have the scene for you to read, and there's a translation of the Latin that Wonka was quoting him in there as well. Not cursing God, that's how you pass the test. Don't steal an everlasting gobstopper. God talking about his amazing creations, right? We had like 3 or 4 chapters of God going on and on. That's the show of grandeur, majesty, just like the tour of Wonka's factory. Then you have Iyov is restored and receives bountiful blessings. That's the reward for passing the test, and that's Charlie getting the factory. And then you have Iyov's wife, Mrs. Iyov, right? That's a relative who initially tries to get the hero to leave the test by suggesting wrongful behavior. This person still ends up reaping the reward of the hero through no action of his or her own. That's Grandpa Joe, right? He gets the reward for Charlie's good deed in spite of his trying to get Charlie to basically fail the test. That is your comparison between Iyov and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, and here's why I think it's so compelling. Let's recall that Satan's job is to test Iyov, right? We all assumed that after Iyov passes the test at the end of chapter 2, where he doesn't curse God, that the test is over. But there's no reason for us to assume that. Satan is not done. What Satan is doing through this entire book is deconstructing Iyov in every which way possible. First, he does it in a very overt way. He kills Iyov's family off, or seems to kill Iyov's family off. He takes away all of his stuff. He afflicts Iyov with problems. Then, Satan's not done. Satan now takes Iyov's 3 friends and enlists them as agents of Satan. They show up and spend the next 30 prakim just tearing Iyov down. They're essentially... What Satan has done in the first 2 chapters is attack Iyov, let's say, physically. What he's doing through the use of the 3 friends in the next several chapters is attacking Iyov spiritually, mentally. He's using the friends to tear Iyov down, right? So that's why Iyov gets progressively angry and angry. These are not friends. These are not the people that he expected who are here to comfort him. The people that are there to comfort him are calling him evil and telling him that he deserves everything that's happening to him. Imagine how he feels. Then Satan introduces the best character in the whole book. That is a character named God. That's not the God that you and I read about in the rest of Tanakh. That's a God whose job it is to show up and do the worst thing that is humanly possible. Give Iyov terrible answers to his question. Do a whole song and dance, a light show about how God creates a bunch of amazing things, which Iyov already knows. What that is there to do is to test Iyov at his last possible moment. God shows up and Iyov's like, finally, I'm going to get a real answer. No, you're not. You're going to get nothing. Now what are you going to do, Iyov? Now are you going to curse God after all of that? That's what happens to Charlie, right? Charlie goes through all the ordeals that all the other kids went through. And at the very end, Wonka drives him nuts. He says, you get nothing. I'm not giving you any answers. You're not getting anything that you expected or wanted or deserve. You get nothing, Iyov. Now what? Now what are you going to do? And Iyov, out of pure will, it was an act of pure will, just like what Charlie did. He said, I'm not doing the wrong thing. I'm gonna shut up now, and I don't know why. I don't understand why this happened, but that's not for me. All I know is I'm not going to the dark side, right? I'm not going to steal the everlasting gobstopper. That was Iyov's response. And in doing that act of pure will, that's when he wins all the fabulous prizes. That's when God is able to say to him, okay, now...
So when he sort of talks a little bit out of line or starts to toe the line in his Lashon, that's him stealing the gobstopper.
That's him stealing, right. That's him, and what's really...
Making the fizzy flying drink.
Right. And what's interesting about it is that God says, Iyov, what you said was the right thing. Remember, that was one of the things that really puzzled us, that God shows up and he says, I'm mad at you, 3 friends, for what you said. That's God. That's actually God showing up. right? Because you weren't being real friends. You were tearing Iyov down. And what Iyov said is right, and that's what's so amazing about the book of Iyov. The book of Iyov is essentially a critique of what the friends were giving the firm response. They're defending God. God says no. When someone is put through the kind of hell that Iyov is put through, the response is to question. You can get angry. You can have problems when things are bad for what seems like no good reason. What God is saying in the book of Iyov is, be upset about that. You don't have to just turn the other cheek and say, you know what, God moves in mysterious ways, everything is good. No, not everything is good, and that's okay. Iyov, what you said is nechona, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You were in pain, and I understand what you said, and challenging God, that is part of Tanakh. That is canonized as Tanakh, the critique of Tanakh, right? Usually you read books in Tanakh and you have the Nevi'im saying, do the right thing and Hashem will restore you, right? There is a book in Tanakh that tells you, no, it's okay sometimes to challenge, to be angry, to feel like, and I want to, actually I have it over here.
Is the notion that it wasn't actually Hashem speaking to him, is that something that you mentioned before?
That's something that I did not mention before. That's my own This is my interpretation.
Okay.
I have not seen this. I've reviewed. I would wager at this point about 200 different essays, books, podcasts, you name it. I have not seen anyone say this yet.
Okay.
I think it's compelling. If you turn to in that handout, you turn to page 6. There's a very nice quote from Aryeh Ben David from a book called The God File, which I was initially turned on to by one of my teachers at Ezra-Eli. I can't remember if it was Moshe Krakowski or somebody. It might have been David Pelkovitz. He says as follows: how does a person come to terms with anger towards God? It hurts so much. Do you wish to continue this relationship, to work through this anger, or is it preferable to remain angry? The greatest danger to a relationship is the severing of all communication. The pain is too great to bear, so silence sets in. It hurts too much to talk about. How could you do this to me? I don't want to talk about it at all. Silence can destroy a relationship in the same way that cancer destroys the human body. When a relationship suffers from a breakdown in communication, it eventually dies. Conversely, the expressing of pain and anger can help a relationship recover. Despite it all, talk. Despite it all, continue. No silence, not even during the hardest of times. What is the source of anger at God? Perhaps you are angered at the latest series of events that have befallen the Jewish people. We have certainly suffered our share of calamities. Why did you let this happen? Scream out, knowing that there is no answer, that there will never be an answer. Know that God's ways are beyond human comprehension, but call out nonetheless. Why? What's the point? Because there can be no silence in the face of tragedy. A response would be welcome. But do not expect a heavenly voice to miraculously respond to pleas and accusations. Rage against God is an act of protest that keeps you from becoming immune to pervasive pain. One cannot simply accept the misfortune of others. When life's events are beyond comprehension, it's only through protest that a relationship with God can be maintained. I think that's a very beautiful sentiment, and I think that's what the book of Iyov is really about. These questions that we asked before of what's the point of the book? The point of the book is not to tell you why bad things happen to good people. The point of the book is to tell you what do you do when bad things happen to good people. When you read the book of Iyov and you're upset that Iyov is being put through all this, that's your, in a miniature way, you're now in Iyov's shoes, right? When you read the book of Iyov and you don't get a good answer to your question, you now know what it's like to feel like, hey, why isn't God giving me a good answer to this? And that is exactly the point of the book. The point, and that's why we had to slog through as many of the chapters. We could have just read the first 2 chapters, the last chapter, and talked about philosophy, right? The reason that I wanted to subject us to slogging through some of this is because then you feel the pain a little bit. You can put yourself sort of in the shoes of Iyov and say, why is this happening? Why do I have to hear chapter after chapter what sounds like the same argument? And for Iyov, what it really is him being deconstructed by the friends. Every chapter is another way that they're pulling him down. They're finding another way to torture him with their words. That I think is the addresses these 4 questions. What the meaning of God's response to Iyov, like we said, is sort of in line with Wonka's response to Charlie to kind of give him that last test. And that I believe is an approach to Iyov that is hopefully a little bit more satisfying than some of the others that we discussed. Yasher koach. That's what I've got.
This is a homeland I'm going to watch.